Hey everyone, welcome to this little adventure that we're calling a podcast. We're so thankful that all of you have turned in to actually listen to us talk about something for a while. It's kind of humbling to be in this position. But yeah, we just thank you for being here. And yeah, we're going to dive into some material, how we want this thing to go, and we'll just kind of take it from here as we want this to be about you guys. We want this to be about questions. We want you guys to ask us questions, and we really just want to be a resource. We think about fishing, fish-related issues, pretty much nonstop, all the time, 24 hours a day. It's going through our heads, whether it's fishing, boat prep, maintenance. I mean, even all the marketing and all that revolves around fishing, man. I mean, that's all we think about. So we want to be that resource. So please, your questions, anything like that, leave them in the comments of our YouTube video feed on this. This will all get posted as a YouTube video. Leave the comment on the podcast. Email us at kyle@jonesportfishing.com. Yeah, we want to hear what you guys want to talk about, and we want to cover those things. We're not really all that interested in just listening to ourselves talk, although we did just start a podcast, so that's kind of silly. But we want to be a resource, and so ask those questions, get them answered, and if we can't answer them, we'll bring some people on that can, and we'll engage in those kinds of conversations. So we really appreciate you guys being here. We're just going to jump right in. Today we're going to talk about plug fishing for walleye. Something that we've been doing a lot of the last few years. I'll actually just give kind of a quick breakdown of kind of how my walleye thing started. Really, I'm a salmon, steelhead fisherman by heart. I grew up in Idaho, grew up fishing the Salmon River in Riggins, moved north to fish the Clearwater, and got into guiding full time. And we realized that there was big holes in our schedule that needed to be filled, and we were tired of bad salmon runs and, you know, kind of just being caught off guard and left behind. And so we decided to, with the help of some really good friends, jumped into this walleye thing. And that was, you know, 5 or so years ago. And man, it's just been an awesome ride since then. At first, you know, it took a little bit for us to sort of kind of dive in and become full-time walleye nuts, but I'm telling you what, I think I get just as much pleasure out of fishing for these walleye now as I do for salmon. I mean, it's fun. They're technical. You got to figure out what's going on. They're not always easy to catch. They move seasonally between spawn. You know, they migrate over large portions of the river. They're just a really cool fish. They're fun to fish for, and they're absolutely delicious. So really, there's absolutely nothing not to like about them. So got into walleye. Most of what we did before was we pulled bottom bouncers and worm harnesses, and that's something if a lot of people have questions on, we can definitely go into that. It's still a big part of what we do. But, you know, we started, as we got into this walleye thing, we really started to pay attention to and watch what was going on with the guys in the Midwest, man. If you guys around here want to see a bunch of walleye nuts, man, get on YouTube and start watching the guys and the information coming out of the Great Lakes in the Midwest. I mean, you want to talk about guys that are all in on walleye. I mean, we think that we love spring salmon more than anything else. These guys, their whole life revolves around walleye. It's incredible. The information out there for techniques and different ways to fish is almost limitless. So that's one of the really cool things about walleye fishing is you can decide that you like to just keep it simple and do that and go out and do the same thing all the time and catch fish, or you can be like me and constantly be tinkering with stuff and looking for the next biggest and greatest thing and kind of find what niche that you find yourself in. And right now, I've just been gung-ho on pulling plugs, big plugs, little plugs, pulling them on lead core, pulling them on flat lines, pulling them on three-way rigs. I mean, there is just something in my brain that clicks at watching a plug rod get buried from a big fish that decided to try to take that thing and break it in half. I don't know about you, but that's pretty cool to me. So, really where we're at right now, I've just been crazy about plug fishing. So, and now, right now, early season, pre-spawn still, water's cold. You know, now a lot of guys think, you know, plugs, fast presentations, dragging things fast, but no, man, this is These plugs being trolled upstream against the current, super slow, are probably one of the most dynamite baits to be fishing in cold water. And so right now, we're going to start walleye fishing here pretty quick. We're going to start pulling plugs. We actually just dropped a video, and I guess it was this morning, depends on when you're watching this, but recently just dropped a video on our Tip Tuesday. We talked about our walleye plug selection, but I wanted to go into that a little bit more and just kind of give you guys a little bit more insight to exactly how we're going about that. I know we got a bunch of questions on if we're pulling them upstream or downstream or kind of what we're doing. So I just wanted to sort of address that stuff and, you know, talk about how much line we're letting out and that kind of thing, and what sort of water we're targeting. So the period that we're in right now, pre-spawn, right now the females are staging near areas where they're going to spawn. So walleye will move a great distance throughout the system, not unlike a salmon or a steelhead, where they'll return to spawning areas. They're not like salmon and steelhead that go back to the same place at birth. Once a female finds a spawning area that she likes, she'll return to that same spot year after year. But her young don't necessarily know to go there. So, you know, there's definite hot spots around where there's a lot of walleye that stage, but that doesn't mean that there's not fish staging in places that, you know, we just haven't figured out yet. But so typically those big females are staging in areas near where they're going to spawn, and, you know, we're talking, especially during the daylight, we're talking in water from, you know, 12, 10 maybe to 25 feet of water. These fish, especially the big females, now the males, the smaller males, that's a different story, but the big females are up much shallower than the males, and in some systems they're up really shallow. But we're talking about the Columbia, the main stem Columbia, and most of the places we fish are in that kind of 12 to 20 to 25 foot range right now, where the big fish are. So we get on those spots, and, you know, a lot of times they're big flats, they're feeding points. You got to remember that these fish, once they hit that spawning cycle, they're not gonna feed. So these fish are feeding heavily right now. As this water starts to warm up, trying to put on those last big meals before it's time for them to actually engage in the spawn, which actually will take them a few days, and they'll totally stop eating, and then there's some recovery time. So they need all the energy they can get. But so as we talked about in that Tip Tuesday video, right now we're looking to these big, deep diving crankbaits like these bandits. I got a couple of them here in my hand for those of you guys that are watching on YouTube. But the big bandits, the extra deep version, they're like 5 inches long. They're a big plug. I mean, they're a mouthful. But the biggest reason that we're fishing these plugs right now is there's ways to get plugs into any style of plug into any type of water. But what makes these plugs so effective right now is this is the bait. This is the size of the bait fish that are out here. You know, I've just got my box of bandits open here, but we fish a lot of flicker minnows, a lot of bay rats. You know, anything that's in this 4.5 inch to 5 inch range, stick baits, Rapalas, you know, F11s, F14s, husky jerks. The suspending husky jerks can be really good. So we're really more looking for that size, that big bait, and it really doesn't have anything to do with the fact that the fish are big and they eat big stuff. It has to do with the fact that all of the bait fish have spent an entire winter, and there hasn't really been a spawn. So everything that's migrating, or, you know, juvenile shad are 4.5 to 5 inches long right now. There's a lot of those in the system. Lamprey, juvenile lamprey are, you know, 4.5, 5 inches long. All the young of the year sucker minnows from last year, you know, they're, you know, pushing 4 inches. You know, so all of the baits are in that size, and that's one of the biggest things that I can stress when you're fishing crankbaits is matching the hatch, and a lot of that has to do with the size and the profile of the bait that you're using. Later in the year, especially when there's a lot of fall Chinook smolt in the system, we start pulling a lot smaller baits, a lot of shad style baits, stuff like that, like the Berkeley flicker minnows and stuff. But we talk about that kind of stuff at a different time. But so our basic approach is we get into these areas where we have a pretty good feeling that there is good feeding location. It's adjacent to shallow water because these females right now are going to be in fairly close proximity to where they're going to spawn. So they're going to be, walleye will spawn up really shallow at night over rocks in windswept areas or areas with a lot of current. So if you're talking windswept or areas with a lot of current and rocks, there's quite a few places in the Columbia River that fit that bill. So don't think that I'm talking all about one spot. There's spots that we haven't even found yet. But our approach is we get on downstream and we get on that troll and we hit those, kind of those flats, or we get an idea for exactly where we want to be, and we let our plugs out. Most of the time, the water, we're running anywhere, like we said earlier, from 12 to 25 feet. And a really good resource for you guys to know how far to put your plugs out is an app called Precision Trolling, and you can get it on iPhone or iOS, or iPhone or Android. And I've got it, and man, it is sweet. You pay a couple of bucks per lure, and you get the dive charts for every single crankbait that's like basically ever been made. Divers, lead core line, all sorts of stuff. It's an incredible resource, and I'm constantly using it to get a general idea of how far back I need to be running my baits. But oftentimes in CS, we're gonna be fishing these things anywhere, depending on how deep it is, from 75 to maybe 150 feet back behind the boat. I mean, the line counter reels are absolutely essential in this situation. You have to know how far your gear is. And as far as rods, we basically just use our standard steelhead back trolling rods, an 8 to 12 or an 8 to 17, something like that. 8.5 feet. I like a little bit of length because I can spread my lines out. Even the 10.5s, they can be real good. But yeah, you want something that you can definitely get your lines spread out and things. But yeah, you start back to what we were talking about. You start back on, back below where you're trying to fish, and you get your gear set up, and you start trolling up to those places. And when we're talking trolling, we're talking like barely moving upstream, like just crawling. And so one thing to remember is if you're looking at your GPS and you're looking at your speed, GPS speed is critical here, because if you've got one of those little paddle wheels that's trying to tell you how fast you're going, I mean, it's going to be counting the current, and you won't know if you're going up or down. But the thing is, on that GPS speed, when you're trying to troll upriver, you have to make sure that at all times you're going more than 0.5 miles an hour. If you're going less than 0.5 miles an hour, chances are you're actually back trolling and going back downriver, which can actually be an effective way to fish if deployed in the right locations. But that's another thing we can get into. So, I mean, as you can see, this thing's just a can of worms. You can get as deep into this fishing stuff as you want, but for right now, we're going to talk about actively trolling in an upstream direction, crawling upstream against the current. So I'm looking to go somewhere between like 0.7 and 1.2. So in the cold water right now, I mean, the water's in the high 30s, low 40s, might be a little warmer than that, but those plugs, if you're going less than a mile an hour, you can imagine they're down there hunting right on the bottom where those fish are, giving them plenty of time to decide if they want to eat that thing or not. I mean, this method of fishing is incredible. It's easy. You kick your feet back, you troll over spots, and you cover a ton of water, and on average, you're going to catch bigger fish. So, I mean, I know I probably just gave everybody about 500,000 questions there, but that's kind of the gist of how we go about fishing plugs. Color selection, we can talk about that for a second. It seems like early in the mornings, it seems like something pretty gaudy or dark in color, like a white, like a hot white and purple. That's a Yozuri crystal minnow. Last year, that one right there was just on fire for the first hour or so of light. Dark colors work really good in the morning. Think solids, that kind of stuff. As the sun comes out, if it clears up, you know, a lot of people will just, oh, they stop biting. Well, you start switching through your plugs, and a lot of times you'll figure out that something a little bit different color, maybe a metallic, or even some of the clear finishes on some of the Berkeley flicker minnows. Those are pretty awesome. Can get that bite fired right back up for you. So don't be afraid to be switching those plugs out almost constantly. So, but yeah, I mean that's kind of a basic rundown of my crankbait trolling program. I mean, there's a lot of other things we run. We incorporate planer boards, lead core line, like I said, three-way rigs if you're trying to fish a stick bait like a F11, those kind of things. But for the most part, for a guy just wanting to get into pulling crankbaits, especially this time of year for walleye, I mean, go out and get a handful of bandits, and the big ones with the big, you know, the gaudy looking thing that you're like, oh my gosh, man, that thing's half the size of a walleye, and sometimes it is, but they eat them. But go get a handful of them in a couple of different colors. You know, get your rods rigged up with some. We run 30-pound braid Power Pro. You know, it gives us plenty of strength. I mean, you don't want to lose your hot lure, but you also want to have that small line diameter so that it cuts down and you get the most diving depth out of your plugs. So 30-pound Power Pro and a line counter reel and a basic everyday steelhead bait casting rod, and you're good to go, and you can start pulling plugs and trying to get after these walleyes. So anyway, guys, everybody out there, thank you for bearing with us. This is going to be a little rough. I know this one was short, but short and sweet, to the point here. If you guys have any questions, we really want to hear your questions. That's what we want to base this entire thing off. I don't want to talk about what I want to talk about. I want to talk about what you guys want to talk about. So send us your questions, comment. Make sure if you're on YouTube, subscribe to us. It helps us so much. Follow us on our Facebook pages. You know, we're trying to provide content all over the place. So any way we can get that to you, guys, give us a chance to get it to you. So again, we just really appreciate. Thanks for hopefully as we do more of these, we'll get better at it. Maybe the audio will get better. I won't stumble around as much, but we really appreciate. I really appreciate you joining me on here, and I appreciate everything that's out there. If you see me out on the water, make sure to say hi. Let me know if you hate these, you love this. I really don't care if you say you hate it, because I'm going to do it anyway. But anyway, thank you, and we'll catch you guys next time. Get out there and get some fishing done. Bye.